You know the words, right? You've probably said them 1,000 times. But what if the whole story you learned about where they came from was a lie? What if the official history of one of America's most famous promises was actually stolen? Let's get into it.
So here they are, the original 22 words. They first showed up way back in 1892, published without a name in a really popular magazine called The Youth's Companion. See, the whole thing was part of this big national push to get kids excited about patriotism, tied to the 400th anniversary of Columbus's voyage. Simple, powerful stuff. And for a very, very long time, everyone thought they knew exactly who wrote it.
Yeah, for more than a century, the story was completely settled. The author? A guy named Francis Bellamy. He was a Baptist minister who also worked for the magazine that printed the pledge. This was the official story, taught in every school, written in all the history books. Case closed, right?
Well, this is where it gets interesting, because while the official story was being celebrated, there was this other story, kind of bubbling up under the surface out in the Midwest. A local legend that said, nope, it wasn't a minister in New York. They claimed it was actually a 13-year-old kid from Kansas.
And get this. Here's the twist that makes this whole thing sound like it's straight out of a movie. The two guys at the center of this mystery, they have almost the exact same name. Seriously. You've got Francis Bellamy, the minister, and then you have Frank Bellamy, the student. No relation at all, but their names got tangled up forever in this crazy historical whodunit.
Okay, so to really get what happened here, we've got to start with the official story, the one that everybody believed. Let's dig into the case for Francis Bellamy, the guy who, for 100 years, got all the credit. And listen, the official story had some serious weight behind it. We're talking about the Library of Congress. In 1957, they looked into the whole thing and came out with a verdict. They said the evidence was, and I'm quoting here, overwhelmingly in favor of the minister. I mean, after that, for most people, the case was pretty much closed.
And it wasn't just an official report. The story became part of American culture. Look at this. It's a school newspaper from 1963. They're talking about a big ceremony honoring Francis Bellamy. They got messages from governors, senators, even a note from President Kennedy. So the minister wasn't just the author. He was a full-blown national hero.
We even have Francis Bellamy's side of the story, in his own words. He wrote a letter to his grandson, and he lays it all out. He talks about sitting down late one night in August 1892, just wrestling with the words. And after a couple hours, boom, he had it. It's a really personal, really believable account.
But while all of that was going on, a completely different story was being passed down in a small town called Cherryvale, Kansas. It was a local legend, and it just wouldn't go away. So now, let's look at the case for the other Bellamy, Frank, the student.
So the Kansas story goes like this. Frank, just a 13-year-old kid, writes a pledge that's almost identical to the famous one. He writes it for a contest. And guess who ran the contest? Yep, the Youth's Companion magazine. And here's the kicker. He supposedly sent it in back in 1890. That's a full 2 years before it was ever published. So when the pledge comes out in 92, Frank sees it and immediately says, hey, those are my words. He writes to the magazine, not asking for money or anything, just asking for credit. The magazine's response? It was pretty cold. They basically said, sorry kid, anything you send us becomes our property. So they didn't deny it, but they definitely didn't confirm it either. And the story gets even wilder. Frank's supporters claim that his pledge was entered into another national contest in 1898. This time, it supposedly won. And not only that, it got the seal of approval from President McKinley. Pretty big deal if it's true. Okay, so let's pause. We've got two very different stories. Two guys with the same name. And 100 years of arguing. So let's do this. Let's put their claims side by side, and you can see what you think. All right, let's really break this down. On one side, you have Francis, the minister. He's got the Library of Congress and all the historians on his side. He has a detailed story about how he wrote it, but he didn't say anything for decades. Then you have Frank, the student. His backing is mostly local legend and family stories. He has no original essay, it's lost, but he claimed it was his right from the start. It's a real puzzle. And this is what kept the mystery going for so long. The big questions. If Frank really wrote it, where's the essay? It's gone. That's a huge hole in his story. But for Francis, if he wrote it, why on earth did he wait decades to take credit? It's super suspicious, right? For years and years, it was just stuck there, a total stalemate.
But then, very recently, in 2022, everything changed. A researcher digging through old archives found something something that nobody had seen for over 100 years, a clue that was about to blow this whole case wide open. Okay, let's go back to the minister's story for a second. Remember when he said he wrote it? He was very specific. August 1892, just before the magazine's September issue. That single date, that's the anchor for the entire official story.
But what if the pledge was already out there?
This is the smoking gun. Researchers found a tiny article in a Kansas newspaper. The date? May 21st, 1892. And in it, it describes a school ceremony where the kids recited a pledge. And guess what? It's a nearly identical text. This was published 3 whole months before Francis Bellamy said he even sat down to write it.
That one little newspaper article changes absolutely everything. It's not just a legend anymore. With this new piece of evidence, we can finally figure this out.
Think about it. The minister couldn't have written the pledge in August if kids in Kansas were already saying it in May. It just doesn't work. The only story that fits this new timeline is Frank's, the boy who said he wrote it in 1890 for a contest. The magazine must have held on to it and then published it later. All the evidence now points to one person, Frank Bellamy, the 13-year-old kid from Kansas.
And what's wild is that the story of who wrote it isn't the only thing that's changed. The pledge itself has been a work in progress. Back in 1923, they changed my flag to be more specific. In the 40s, they got rid of the original salute, which was a straight-arm salute, because it looked way too much like the one being used in Nazi Germany. And then in 1954, right in the middle of the Cold War, Congress added the words "under God." So it turns out the authorship isn't the only part of this story that's been rewritten over time. So that leaves us with this one big question. For over 100 years, the official story was completely wrong, backed up by the government, celebrated by presidents, and all it took was one little forgotten newspaper clipping to flip the entire thing on its head. It really makes you wonder, right? How many other official histories that we take for granted are just one discovery away from being totally rewritten?